Because I am convinced if we would simply do what Jesus did, instead of arguing and bickering about what Jesus said, how much better would the world be? How much brighter would our brand be? I mean, come on, you want to see somebody change? You want to influence them? You can either hurt them deeply or you can love them profoundly. But how you treat people is what opens the key, is the key of leverage and turns the lock. And if we want leverage, and friends, come on, we have lost leverage in the world. We have lost leverage in culture because we're so invested in arguing about what we believe and we don't pay very much attention to how we treat people. Grace and truth. Jesus was both. Now, I keep 2 books on my desk. I got a lot of books. They pass. They're very transient. I read them, discard them, read them, take notes, throw them away, sell them, whatever, keep them, file them. But I keep 2 on my desk at all time. One is this big boy right here. This is my study Bible. It's on my desk every day because I believe that this is the divine inspired word of God, and that as John Wesley, who's kind of started the movement of Methodism a long, long time ago, said that all things necessary for salvation are found on these pages. I believe that. So I spend a lot of time with this book. But there's a second book that I keep that's a lot thinner, but to me, I wouldn't say it's equally as important, but it's pretty darn close. And it's called 3 Simple Rules, A Wesleyan Way of Living. If you're new to the Methodist Church, there's a guy named John Wesley who in about 1739 began to live his life in such a way that it created a very compelling movement that ultimately became a denomination. I won't bore you with the details of how that happened, but let me just say, nobody on the planet Earth was more rigid or stringent or strict about following the rules than Wesley. The reason we're called Methodists is because they looked at John Wesley and said, wow, he is so crazy methodical with the rules. We were named by our critics because Wesley believed in fasting all the time, abstinence, daily prayer, sacrament, not once a month, every single day. Small group, mandatory. Reading the Bible, mandatory. Up at 4 a.m. in prayer and reading every day. Rigid, rigid, rigid. Here's the methods. You want to be close to God? Here's the method. Boom, 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 boom. That's Wesley. But Wesley said, let me put all that in context. And he categorized all of the rigid stuff under 3 rules. We call them in the Methodist tradition the general rules. And when I went before the bishop, I was obligated by doctrine and discipline to stand before the bishop with all of my contemporaries and peers that were also getting ordained. And the bishop said, do you believe in the general rules? I said, yes, sir, I do. Will you follow the general rules? Yes, bishop, I will. And then he kind of threw me a curve. He said, do you know what they are? And nobody had prepped me for the answer to that question. And as God is my witness, I'm not embellishing, I'm not making it up. Not one person in my class of ordinands, there's about 10 of us up there, not one person knew the general rules. So now I keep this with me everywhere I go. And here's why. These are the general rules. Number 1, do no harm. See, Wesley got what Jesus was talking about. That's where it starts. Don't hurt anybody. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt anybody. You want to comply with all the rules, you figure this out. Don't hurt anybody. There's other rules too. Do good and then stay in love with God. The third one's actually stay in love with the ordinances of God. Ordinances just is another word for rules. Wesley said the rules are important. We're methodological. We're methodical. That's why they call us Methodist. But you can't get to that unless you take care of number 1 first. Don't hurt anybody. That's what drives our brand. That's why Hannah gets up here and makes a compelling case for you all to be greeters. Do you know I think the most important people on our ministry team are not preachers or musicians? They're greeters. You know why? I believe this. Because that's where we run the risk of hurting people. Oh, you're not dressed right. Oh, you don't look right. We don't know if you're welcome here, right? And you guys are so warm I can't out-preach anybody that gets harmed by a greeter. We can't out-sing anything that happens in the parking lot. It doesn't matter what we believe inside this room if we harm them before they have a chance to hear it. with the way we treat them. Jesus says, love God with all your heart and soul and mind, but love your neighbor as yourself. You can't do one without the other. So my question is, what would love require of us as a church, the Big C church? And if we led with that question, what would happen to our brand? Because this is all the first century Christians had. Think about it. They didn't have preachers. They didn't have churches. They didn't have the Bible. Come on, they didn't have the New Testament for 300 years. They didn't have the New Testament. They might have had a letter from Paul in one community. They might have had a visit from Paul. They might have had a sliver of a piece on a scroll of the gospel according to Mark. You know what they had? They had a way of life that said, what would love require of me right now? That's all they had. And that was so compelling, they won the world. What if we got back to claiming that part of our brand?